Good evening. You're listening to the Extreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob, broadcasting to you from the Extreme Studios in the Pineless Palace, just west of wet Orlando, Florida here. I've got RDV from the Great Midwest joining me tonight. We are reviewing the 2024 reimaging of Salem's Lot, based off the novel by Stephen King. Now, RDV, I know that we've talked a little bit about Stephen King here. I just want to give some backstory to this because this movie is a bit divisive. The general consensus of everybody is that it looks great, but the lack of characterization makes it suck because it's under 2 hours. And the original TV show that was a miniseries event over 2 nights, I believe it was, almost 3.5 to 4 hours long, is still considered the gold standard. And honestly, I would, on paper, sit there and have to agree with it. And I felt so strongly about it then when we had a remake of 2004 with Rob Lowe, kind of reimaging. It's watchable, but yet forgettable.
Mm-hmm.
I was really excited about this, but with COVID and everything, this movie didn't come out. And I want to sit there and be the first one to say this. Normally, if I were to rank them, obviously I would put the TV version first because it's got just a lot of things going for it. That being said, if I was watching Salem's Lot for the very first time and saw this, there's a lot of things I could say. It would make me want to see more. It visually quite stunning, very impressive. We're going to get into some of the scenes. I think this guy did a fantastic job with the vision that he had of Salem's Lot. So I am not going to compare this to the original one. And people might say, well, Rob, how can you do that? Because it's been about 50 years. Normally I always do. But this movie's done so many things really, really good. And yes, it does lack the depth and characterization. When people die in here, you almost don't care. But I got to tell you, I was stunned at how well this came out. This was better than expected to me, and I was pleasantly surprised by it. I kind of wish it was an hour longer because I kind of wish it was done the other way. But you know what? I thought this guy has his own vision. He's the guy that does, I think, the Conjuring or the Annabelle stuff.
Annabelle,
produced by James Wan. This is a friggin' good-looking, sexy movie. This is tremendous. There's some interesting things. What's your take on this?
So I actually really enjoyed this for being a reboot. Usually reboots are I especially if it's a horror movie, because this was always considered listed to be as a horror / like mystery, suspense thriller,
Mm-hmm.
And I expected going in this, okay, they're doing a reboot. It's 2024. The last one that came out was like 1975, 74, around that time. Or
late 70s. The book I think was King's second or third.
Yeah, and so I'm expecting they're gonna amp the gore, amp the fright in this, and because reason I said because I expect the worst. I'm not into unnecessary gore. Like I don't need somebody's eye being ripped out. I don't see popping. I don't need to see all that crap.
Right.
You see in the stupid B movies. Like I forget what, Mosquito or whatever.
Or like Hostel or something. You know.
I don't need to see that. I don't need. The term is called gore porn.
Mm-hmm.
For people who really love gore. So this was very tame about that. So if anything, I was taken back by this movie for how visually stunning it is, and that's why I chose this as the thumbnail. The scene where they're the two brothers walking through the woods, and you're just walking them. You're following them, going from left to right, right to left, and then you see a figure pull up behind a big adult, grab the younger brother, and then also the older brother turns around and he's gone. And then that's just one example of just how great this movie is as far as visually stunning. So I mean, just by the visuals alone, the way this is filmed, 10 out of 10.
I find almost no fault visually with this movie. Really,
music is great, matches it. I like that it's a little darker. It doesn't have to be super bright. And just like most movies, they do have their flaws. So I mean, I'm more forgiving on this. And as far as comparing it to the first and this, honestly, I cannot say that I remember much about the original because it's been a while since we watched it. And then when we did watch it, I wasn't a huge fan of it. I did appreciate what it was, but I wasn't like, oh my gosh, this is the best movie ever.
Right.
So, but I do remember certain things, and I do like the creative liberties they took with this, because
obviously for a 2-hour movie, he had to choose to cut a lot of things off. So
it's a second reboot, so I don't need to be accurate for me personally. You had the 2011 Rob Lowe one, miniseries. I think it was like 4 episodes. Or
I think they did it just like the other one, where it was like a
Yeah.
two-parter, like 2
Yeah.
hours one night, 2 hours another.
Yeah. So honestly, I can forgive this for changing things, because who wants to watch the same thing 3 times, by 3 different people?
You know what? That comment alone is worth talking about, because that's all right. So let's just back up a bit. I'm gonna go right into it. When the movie first starts up, that's what I call in Michael Myers text, the Halloween movie franchise. I don't
Mhm.
believe that's Alberta's font. It could be Alberta's. I always think of John Carpenter, but watching the map is telling you a story as you're settling in, because the first thing that comes up is this map, and it's the Indiana Jones thing, right, where we get
I
the plane
love
flying
it.
with that, except for it's in blood and it takes you into Jerusalem's lot. It's a
It's
simple,
called Trail.
easy visual to do, but the haunting music in it is pretty darn good. And this is not a synthwave kind of score or anything,
No.
so I think it's appropriate. It's very sad, and so I think starting off here, they eliminate a lot of the backstory of some of the characters you get in here, especially the ones that die. And if you only had 2 hours to make your own version of this, I think what was intelligent is about the third act, which we'll mention. But starting off, we're treated to this. We're like, hey, man, this is pretty good, because you've got to nail this opening to set the tone for the rest of the movie. And this opening sequence does it, in my opinion. I was like, wait a minute, I'm in for something here, I hope. What did you think?
Well, I thought this was actually really good. An intro it's like watching, like, I get say like Lord of the Rings, or you bring up Indiana Jones, where they show the map and then they show the towns, and you can just enough, and you see notes there on a desk because somebody's doing research. Because it was really cool. It's kind of like if you ever played a Uncharted game, you know, the same thing on the desk, the maps and stuff. He's been, places looking for things. That, I mean, I like that. It does set the tone. As I said, the music complements everything of this. And
one thing this guy does great is doors and red light. If you've watched anything in the Conjuring universe and all that, you're going to get it in here.
If you like Michael Mann close-up angles and stuff like this is pretty much like a nice nod to that as far as the visual stunning. We talk about there's a scene. Obviously, we have the guys who are supposed to deliver to the coffin to the Marsten House. And the guys want to be there. There are some subtle notes right there, but I want to talk about when they get into the basement. The basement seems much more darker, much more creepier.
Mm-hmm.
It
is scary, and nothing happens.
That's the thing. It's like it doesn't happen. That's the thing about this movie. Not putting a jump scare where the obvious jump scare is, to me, is much more clever than actually having the predictable jump scare. So
right.
So I like that. It was kind of like keeping me on my toes, because I'm like, all right, something's gonna happen. Something is, because we know what happens in the original in the back of the truck. They're hearing the thump, 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 and then they get eaten. Like this took the liberty of just basically like they carry down into the basement, and then they accidentally dropped it so freaking heavy, and they see dirt come out. And they make a comment about that. So I did like that. You see the close up of the crack where the cloud comes, but then you also see I think almost it looks almost like a hand at first. Not, it's very light. Like it's not, you don't see a full hand, but you see something in there. But they leave, and like it's just crazy how in this okay. So comparing the first and the second one, the whole point was basically that this vampire basically moves in there. He's picking out the town one by one, and they stick to that. They keep that. They cut out the affair between the realtor and this other lady, and which I didn't mind, because I really didn't need those characters as much, And
for what he was trying to do, you did not need all that.
No. We're introduced to, I believe his character is David, or not David. No.
Ben Mears?
Not Ben Mears. The other one, the little boy, Mark. Sorry, Mark. He doesn't really. He gets introduced, but like the way he gets introduced is basically as a newcomer coming into town. First, David comes in the town, or not. Sorry, David. I keep trying to say that. Ben Mears' character comes into town. he's pulled to the sheriff, and the sheriff like, what are you doing here? He's like, well, I'm from here. He's like, he's like, just to stay out of trouble, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes to town. He goes in the library. He's doing his research. We're introduced to, I believe her name is Susan Norton, who's arguing with her mom
in the realtor's office. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cop.
So basically, see the cop there. So we're getting a little introduction. And then they change it a little bit because I guess when they go in the library is like, oh my gosh, don't you know who that is? That's Ben Mears over there. And Susan's mom being a little bit controlling was new. That wasn't really in the first movie. If it was, I forgot about that. But I did like the subtle change for that.
I want to mention this though, because you're bringing up some things that, again, if you're watching this and you're, say, under the age of 50 and don't remember the other ones, what's interesting here is Stephen King, generally in his mid-70s, still producing content. He was known for writing about small towns and people having dark sides and being humans. And some people liked it. A lot of critics at the time thought, oh, it's trash. It's like soap opera. And King could just pound the stuff out. This is a big novel, so every character has a backstory, and he ties it all together, and that's what he's known for doing. For her, though, I agree with you. If you didn't need to have this as a backstory for what was going to happen, the author, I think, treated the source material seriously enough where he said, whatever I'm going to change here, I'm going to make it make sense in the end for what they're driving, because an analogy that Stephen King uses a lot in his horror fiction is the death of the small town, or the loss of innocence as a human being, especially when you're a kid. And you don't know that because if you didn't grow up in the 70s where things were pretty bleak or whatever, and then going up into the 80s, you didn't really experience. So that's why this being set in the mid 70s, you see them going through the drive-in and all that too. But smartly, and like, well, I say smartly, but you think everybody does it, not everybody does. As a director, he's showing you all the characters, he's showing you what they do. There's not a lot of talking. You're getting visuals of things that are going to be important to the town. Exactly. The Marsten House, everything. It makes sense. It's very efficient in what he's doing. But that's one thing I like, because this movie is one you're watching. You're not having to listen to what this person's saying to another. You could almost watch this without listening to them talk and understand every scene.
And that's the thing. I don't need, or in the first movie, I felt like there was hardly anybody to root for, because everybody in town was like not that good. They were kind of like jerks. Mark's father and his mother. Their whole segment with his father yelling at him about the whole all the horror stuff in there, Halloween stuff, the grow up stuff. That stuff is out of there. They took that out, which I'm glad, because that character being a jerk, in the first movie, I was like, he got what he came to him towards the end. But I mean, they cut a lot of that stuff out as far as Mark's stuff. So, but Mark's introduction basically was he's meeting
the Glick brothers. He's trying to do a magic trick, and the bully comes up, but something different happens.
Basically, he's a new kid. He's and he gets beat up and punched him, but then he's like, screw this. The guy's like, oh, are you stupid or something? And he tackles him and he beats the shit out of him. Keeps pounding him. And he's on top of him, and you get introduced to the teacher, the principal. Oh, I think this is the math teacher, or I forget what he's.
I don't remember. He's just a teacher to me.
Matthew Burke's character.
This guy. I don't know nothing about him, but his voice does not match his body, because the way he talks is very elite level.
He's kind of like if you watched Head of the Class, he's kind of got that guy's voice. He's got that commanding.
That's the guy from the KRP in Cincinnati.
Yes. And at first you're like, he looks out. He hears commotion. Looks outside, sighs, and then he looks at the teachers just sitting there talking to their smoking break. They don't give a crap what's going on outside. So he goes out, and my first reaction, because they did cast a black kid, this would be the first point. Well, if you're gonna have it being woke, this is where he goes out there and he would told the little black kid, he would have been racist. Instead, his character wasn't.
This is what you can root for.
But I like this because the fact that he he's like, hey, did he say uncle? Yeah. Then leave it up after that. He's like, yes. And he's like, don't worry about it. Like, everybody hates that killer.
Old school playground morals.
I love that. He's like, yeah, you know, basically it's like even the principal. He's like, kid's a prick, deserves it. But you know, it just like, you know, just try to stay out of more scuffles. You know, he doesn't go and call his parents up and like, yeah, your son's is a troublemaker or all and stuff. He's all they don't really. Yeah, it's not like that. That I felt would have been like in the if they would have done that in the Stephen King movie, that would have been more of that Stephen King style. If they would have done that with this kid.
Well, here the kid says he's got to fight back, and he's telling the two kids because they're all playing in his room, and this is an homage to the original one with the windows and the cross and that little diorama or whatever it's called. And so basically we're treated to our first very scary scene, in my opinion, which is the kids being abducted with the whole, I can't explain it other than you need to go watch it. It's tremendous, and it's creepy as hell. But by now, we've seen the movie. It's taking everything serious. We've met pretty much all the characters here for the most part. Yep. And we know that there's a romance here that you could argue feels rushed or forced. I think it's not quite rushed. I think it's fine. The girl lets him know that, hey, I'm going to be by myself tonight at the drive-in movie theater. You know, she makes it obvious, and he shows up. She has a spot, and she takes him. And this is cool seeing all the cars parked out there, and it looks great. And I'm telling you, they captured the aesthetic of what it felt like to go back there with the cars and the way they dressed.
It felt authentic because I mean, we had a drive-in here too up till the early 2000s. And I knew people who would go climb on top of the stuff, you know, where the projectors up and watch some of that. So that's nothing like, you know, it's not like this, you know, that's new. I think that's kind of cool, clever. They did that. They put it in there because it felt realistic. It felt like, you know, like it was a fake script. It felt like it was written by somebody who actually used to do this as a kid, you know. And she, you know, and then we get as, you know, because we're basically Ben Mears. Through Susan, we get the lay of the land, you know, as far as what's going on in this town, you know, Jerusalem. And basically everybody knows everybody, and the gossip, you know, is we get a story about her ex-boyfriend, you know, he's a jerk, and he's basically the guy, he's the groundskeeper, he's, you know, undertaker, he's the one that buries the bodies, you know, and you know, her mother wants him to get back with him, and she's like, hell no, and she wants to get out of this town. She moved back after her father died, you know,
and what does he say? He goes, that sounds nice. You're like, oh my God, this seems kind of wholesome almost.
Yeah.
All they're doing is just knocking boots.
so I like that they get. We get the whole thing about her mother's overbearing, controlling, and I'm like, so right away we're taught to hate the mother. This scene,
yes,
and that's a key because as it goes to the rest of this, you know,
Now I think what we should do is I'll quickly fast forward through the second act so we can spend most of the time at the end, and we'll mention a few things here. Basically, what's being set up here is we've met everybody, we've seen what the relationships are in a town, and we get our creepy event, so the shit's getting real, literally. We had some creepy scenes, one scary one in my opinion, not that much blood necessarily, but already we're kind of creeped out, and the great thing about it here is we're treated to a second act where we see an homage, I'm saying that word again, to the original movie and book, where I'm not going to describe it. I'm going to go too graphic here with the detail, but you basically see where Mike, you know, one of the real famous scenes from the original one is being floating around the window, being led in. You do it, you see the crossness and that. And what I loved about what Stephen King does, and it really comes across great here in the second act, is it almost lulls you into a sense of sleeplessness or sleepiness here, because it's kind of, they dial it down a bit because it's more about the mystery of, hey, the kid's missing. We've got a search party. What's going on? The guy that buried the body. We see what happens to him. He gets seen in a bar by the teacher who decides, hey, I'm going to take him to my place, but then he leaves because he thinks he sees someone going in the window. And it's just done well, where they don't overdo it. So they hooked you. Now they're slowing the speed down and everything. They're not rushing. You're not totally mad at everybody or totally whatever. You're right, we don't necessarily care for it, but the big thing that happens here is when we get the doctor, the girlfriend, and Ben Mears together, and he's like, hey, I know it sounds vampires, and they go in there and they treat this whole thing seriously, because this is where this movie could fly off the rail. And all I'm going to sit there and say is, yes, we know that the guy ended up turning, and they milk a lot of tension out of the scene with all that, so it's not horrific, but you definitely get to see what happens. But the other subplot of Mark going through what he does, I think everything picks up at this point here because things start to go a little bit faster when we see Mark basically running out by himself. We see the teacher get knocked out and barely surviving. We get the doctor coming in, discovering this pattern of anemia with a couple of the townspeople, and all of a sudden they all find themselves together in the same room, saying, "Hey, this is what's going on." But to me, the shit really starts when the kid and the doctor are going to the Mears house, because he's like, I'm going to honor my word. I'm going to set you free, Danny, and he goes to do it, and then they all get out, and we basically see him running to his tree house, and then all of a sudden you start seeing all the vampires out, and that's really the whole third act, is basically a chase for the big battle. So what would you like to talk about in this middle part going to the end?
Well, going through these scenes I've been showing, obviously when the kids go in there, Mark runs into Matt, and Matt's like, climb up the stairs and now turn on the light now, Mark. And he turns the light bulb, knocks for out there, it's there, bites him.
It's an incredible scene.
And then it quickly cuts to this, and you see Straker taking the kid. He's screaming, and that's all you see of that. But as they go through, they're driving through town. They're about to go, hey, let's go to Matt's house. But then we see, there's one of the boys, Danny, who actually is the actor for this brother. He's the twin of the actor who plays Adam on over on what's it called, The Boys.
Okay.
And I like that. We get a lot of scenes where they're perching, creeping with the glowing eyes like this.
Now that's exactly what it looked like in the TV show, and it works. It's still effective. Yeah. It's not overdone. Yeah.
So then, we get this whole thing. It's like, okay, they need these areas, and you go to the Marsten house. They need to take out, but they're like, but when they get in there, they realize, well, there's no one in there, and they, it's like, well, where's the whole? Because they realize that the whole town's kind of missing.
Yes.
But
they got to survive the night.
But more importantly, we got a scene here where basically the priest, who's basically is kept the same. He's more so he's an alcoholic. His faith is kind of shoddy a little bit, and he's over at Mark's house, and Mark's father just got killed, and you see him, he's like, basically he's like, and then the cross, the glowing crosses. I love this.
They look so great.
It's so great. I've never seen that before in anything. So I really like when they do that. And then, of course, it fails out, and then he gets murdered, just like in the original. We cut back to the town and just the scenery and everything.
This whole thing, them standing in front of the Marsten house, because we're like, you and I are both thinking, burn the fucker down. But they can't, or even if they do, it doesn't matter. And they only have about a half hour of sunlight left. Yeah. And there's all these great shots of the town, and there's some of these scenes cutting of accumulated newspapers and milk bottles and stuff, saying nobody's there. So they're all trying to warn people and do things. Things happen. They end up at the church, and it sets up the big final battle where people have died at this point. Yeah. So where is it that everybody's going to end up? Because Ben Mears has a flash of intuition. He's like, hey, what's missing? People are like, yeah, it's quiet. It's like, no, there's no cars. And they're like, well, where is everybody? And they're like, and they're at the drive-in.
Yep. So
talk about this drive-in scene here. That's the grand finale.
Well, I'm kind of going a little slower. I'm not, so I want to go through this. I got some scenes here. I'm grabbing over here. This is the treehouse. I love this. All the kids that are gone missing. Mark's inside the treehouse. He basically closed the door. And the other thing we forgot to mention about this is that if your invitation is revoked, you are sent flying out of the place. Now, I wondered about this too, because this is a treehouse. Now, and so I always thought about that. It's like, if one got in, could he say, I revoked, you're not allowed in, whatever. But yeah, so I always thought this was kind of cool. All the kids in the trees and like, Mark, come out.
It's such a great visual when they pull away. Oh, it's incredible.
And then you get this scene right here, the ghost town.
Twin Peaks and traffic lights, if you're a Twin Peaks fan, people.
Yes. So you've seen that multiple times. Got another skill I'm gonna pop up here.
Yes. This is one of the scenes that made me go in the trailer, I think I want to see this film. Look at that.
I didn't even see the trailer, so I was, when this popped up, I was like, man, we saw the two on the roof of Burke's house. Now outside the actual church, Ben realized, oh shit, the whole town's here.
Yeah.
And I love the fogginess. It's like, I love this classic Stephen King. It's not a Stephen King movie. Let's just
Fog
like
machines
fog.
rule. They do. From the 80s, I can tell you they do.
So then, of course, you said we're gonna go over to the drive-in because he has a cookie and he looks up at
Yeah, but they do something and they make the drive-in and integral part here. They're all burning for a reason. What happened?
Well, because originally the sun was going down, but you realized that they're all
nuts.
Yeah. So basically, this thing was that he decided that he was going to have basically all of them in order to hide them. There's not enough coffins and there's not enough room in the Marsten house, so they all go in the trunk of the drive-through, the drive-in. And that's basically clever because it takes you out. The drive-in was a key thing in the beginning of this movie, so they bring it back here. And plus, you get to see all these cool classic cars, man. Come on, really?
I know, right?
I can't complain about that.
Oh
so,
yeah. Big notes.
Ben's being tackled, and so because he can't bring himself to kill as Susan, and basically we also got Susan's mom, who became the new familiar after because the other guy was basically beat to death by Mark. Mark basically
whacked him.
Mark whacked him with the fire poker, and
it was brutal.
Oh my gosh! They show you the shadow.
The shadow.
The blood spat. I love it. It's great. So
Mark is kicking ass and taking names, chewing bubble gum and everything.
So Susan's mom is basically a short striker. She's a new caretaker for Draco, basically, and she's got a shotgun, just trying to shoot him. Mark's about to be attacked, and the vampires. And so what does he do? Mark goes in the car, takes out all the superfumes of the drive-in screen, causes a collapse, and it causes the sunlight to go onto them, and then let them on fire. Now, some people are saying, well, that's kind of crap. So only direct sunlight kills you if you're a vampire.
Well, they're also freshly minted ones, so they have the least amount of resistance.
Sure, yes, I would say that. And then we get the Mac Daddy on top of you're blocking the screen, bro. You're blocking the camera.
At first, I was like, is this the character, the guy that plays Slender Man, or was he the guy? Because Slender Man's actor is the one that did The Last Voyage of Demeter, which is a vampire one from a year ago that bombed, but it was an incredible film. It's not. This is a different actor, but I thought he did a really good job.
Oh,
very creepy looking.
He jumps on because Ben's pinned beneath the thing. Yeah. Actually, no. Is it Ben or I can't remember? Was it Ben or Mark? One of the two is. I think it's Ben. And
Ben's fighting his girlfriend vampire in the inside the concession stands, while Mark's trying to avoid the Nosferatu guy here.
And Nosferatu's trying to reach through the actual, the screen, the hole in the screen, to get him. And then I believe it's
a great shot.
Yeah, but before that, Ben was about to get shot by Susan's mom, and she gets hit, beep beep, run over the car by Mark. He just takes her out, and it's very comical, but I enjoy it though. It's well deserved because
take that bitch.
The bitch is dead.
That's right.
So basically they ended up stabbing him through the back of the heart while he's trying to grab I believe it was Ben, and then it's they decide, well, everyone's dead, let's leave. And literally they just leave, and then they're like, that's it.
Yeah, they're interested in the idea of it. This is not a flash forward where they're in Mexico or wherever trying to chase other vampires and stuff. There's nothing in the beginning or ending or after the credits to imply any continuation, which is completely fine by me. It's
a standalone movie, which I don't mind.
Yes, I don't mind either.
Now we're going to talk a little quickly. We have a little bit of time left, and as far as it goes for the movie being cut down to 2 hours, this was never supposed to go streaming. This was originally supposed to go to theaters, and it was actually set for almost 3 hours.
That's the print I want to see. And
the director was he had to cut 90 minutes or whatever out of it. So he's like, what do I do? Everyone's got a favorite part, but I got to make it where it actually makes sense now. I'm cutting it, and he wanted to keep the basics in there in the story plot. So I said, instead of going to the Marsten House where they're all in the cellar in the original movie, come on, the drive-thru is way better. I like that, it's more challenging, and that So overall, it's like I said, a very good movie. The only other thing people critics could complain about was the doctor when she got bit by Danny's mom, Danny, and in the morgue. Like she took herself a rabies shot, and it stopped her from changing. Like, so now vampirism is a disease that you're able to cure. So, and like, but they used the cross too to put on. That was the other thing too, was the cross. It has to be bound tape. They use the tongue.
Yeah, you can't hold them up.
Yeah,
I think that's an homage to be like, hey, we're not Hammer Films. We tape ours.
Yeah. So that was really cool. Like I said, overall, I really enjoyed this, and I think if you haven't done so, I mean, please, the comments down below, let us know what you thought of this movie. You know,
yeah, my last comment would be, it's definitely worth checking out. It surpassed my expectations. Unfortunately, the studio fuckery gets involved. I think the 2-hour print for what it is fantastic. It's a joy to watch visually. I could actually say, you know what, I would not mind rewatching this again during the Halloween seasons in the years to come. It's that entertaining and visually stunning. I think the Gordon Lightfoot song, Sundown, I think is what it's called. He was in a relationship with, I think, the chick that after she left him ended up getting with John Belushi and got him shot up with heroin back in the 80s. If you go back there, if you're an older person, Gordon Lightfoot song, it's great because this is a period piece. People want to remind everybody of it. But I was surprised. I wish this went out in theaters. I would have went to go see it, and I think this would look even better in the theater. But yeah, this is not a juvenile, goofy kind of film. This is, I think, a serious take on it, and I give them a thumbs up. I know people are shitting on it, and I understand why, but the guy did it so good. I don't care. I agree with you. It's a very good watch.
All right, guys. So that's here. Let us know if you enjoyed this or if you hated it, or I mean, especially if you're coming into this fresh, never watched the original one. Is that why you liked it? Because honestly, I enjoyed it better because it was shorter. But I understand. I like the other one for other parts. This was just so visually stunning. I really couldn't complain about what was missing, but yeah. So we'll see you guys next time, and as always, stay extreme, guys.